Good morning. Welcome to Seattle Atheist Church. Welcome atheists, agnostics, and today welcoming the formerly churched, hopefully to continue to be church, but to change the meaning of what it means to have church. So whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. At Seattle Atheist Church, we call ourselves an atheist church because you will never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. I'd like to share with you the Seattle Atheist Creed, which is, Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. So if that sounds right to you, then you're probably in the right church. And I would like to welcome everyone. Next week is very special because we have quarterly planning meetings where you, the church, plan what topics you'd like to talk about, what socials you'd like to do, and other things like that. So if you had any question of whether or not you are invited to the planning meetings, you are. Jack leads them. They're kind of agile style and all community driven. So, and which leads me to, I just want to say, which I thank you again for being here. Just being here is a contribution. It's a contribution of your time and of your heart. And so we really appreciate people for being here and for all that you do to make church possible. If you would like to donate, there is a donation jar over there by the door, and also you can donate online at seattleatheist.church. So the talk today is on people leaving their religion, and I have to say, just a personal note, when I was a Christian, I really didn't know there was anything else I could be. It hurts so much to have doubts because I really thought it was like, Satan was causing me to doubt and so just by having this space, I think we are helping people. And so I'm looking forward to your talk and the discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, so the topic for today is on stories of people leaving religion. In the amount of time that we normally allocate for a talk from this podium, I would like to go over some general themes and common experiences shared by people who have led a life of sincere religious faith, but later had to work through renegotiating the circumstances that formed over the time while they were adherents to the religion they ultimately walked away from. I will work hard to avoid going into the specific reasons that people stopped believing and stay out of the rabbit holes of moral arguments or scrutinizing the veracity of supernatural truth claims, any one of which could be a big discussion unto itself. Instead, I want to focus on both the positive and the negative experiences that people have when adjusting to a non-theistic, non-religious worldview. And while I will be briefly highlighting specific people's experiences to do this, I'm really hoping that my talk will encourage some of you here in this room to open up and share some of your stories in the discussion time later on. Difficult aspects of faith-based worldview just beneath the surface that a lot of people experience. While most people faithfully adhere to a religion based on high confidence that their system of belief is not only based on the truth, according to their scriptures, they also believe that their adherence will assure that things will be right, even when they do not seem to be okay. They feel that when they are on the correct side of moral issues and they have a whole community of fellow believers who look after one another's needs. I learned a new word while digging around for stories of apostasy, and that word is scrupulosity. It is defined as a form of OCD in which the sufferer's primary anxiety is the fear of being guilty of religious, moral, or ethical failure. And then I found a really good example of just such a thing in a book that Ruth recommended to me titled Women Beyond Belief, Discovering Life Without Religion. In it, one contributor, Ann Wilcox, described a constant inner turmoil about what she called normal childhood transgressions, and they really were, such as wishing to stay home from church on Sunday night or sneaking an extra cookie out of the kitchen. She felt conflicted about her appearance, wanting to be pretty, but worrying that she might be committing vanity. Growing up, she often struggled to be good to the point of what she called debilitating perfectionism. These feelings and doubts can accumulate over time. The more they learn about themselves and the world around them, the harder it becomes to reconcile their discoveries with the beliefs that they profess. And the turning point for many people in the stories that I've been hearing and reading, wherein a person comes to the full realization that they can't actually maintain the beliefs that are consistent with their religion, are often marked by a long period of seemingly bearable internal conflicts for some considerable length of time, followed by a major life event. Something big in the news, or the death or illness of a friend or family member, or a shakeup in the leadership, or a scandal in the church community. The event itself is usually not described as a proof positive, comprehensive demonstration of how their professed beliefs must be false, but rather it's more often described as something that didn't move them in the way they would have expected if their professed beliefs were sincerely held. The seatbelt didn't work. The sacred text that they thought would provide solace and guidance in such a time turned out to be empty and seem more absurd than helpful. In fact, the same can be said for words of comfort, condolence, or encouragement from other people with good intentions within their faith communities. And at a time like this, when all that a person hoped would help them make sense of the things that they can't wrap their head or heart around, it's time to start over. And it becomes time to start looking for what truly does make sense at the most basic levels, to start building a worldview that orients them to the difficult realities of life. This is where the active learning kicks in. The rapid learning stage is what I call it. Within Christian culture, in just about any denomination, you will not have a hard time finding testimonials on the internet, stories of people's life experiences that led them to an active faith in the God of the Bible. Quite often, these stories will include an early period soon after they realize their belief, where they become voracious learners, devouring scripture and seeking out teachings from other believers, attending church as often as possible and other events. But this behavior is certainly not exclusive to Christianity. It happens to anybody with a major shift in worldviews. And while atheism is technically defined as a lack of belief, it should not be mistaken for a lack of perspective. And in fact, there are many people who have brought a lot of perspective to offer on a vast range of issues that would be of interest to anyone who has spent a long time as an adherent to one of the world's major religions. On the short list, of course, you have big names in the new atheist movement, such as Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, etc., as well as other influential personalities like Greta Christina, Matt Dillahunty of the Atheist Experience and his YouTube channel that focuses on counter-arguments to Christian apologetic arguments, and many other personalities that I could spend a lot more time naming but won't. But a great many of the people who are finding their way out of religion are doing so in much the same manner that others find their way in, through active and insatiable learning. But next, it's one thing to come to your own conclusions, especially when those conclusions are really, really big and life-changing and different from most of the people that you surround yourself with. So next comes a time for people to figure out how or when they will be coming out. While it is not at all hard to find outspoken atheists who will be happy to tell you all the reasons that this or that or all religions are bunk, the fact is, on a personal level, for many people, coming out about their lack of belief to their closest friends and family members whom they love, respect, and with whom they want to maintain good relationships is not as simple or easy, no matter how strongly they think they have the facts on their side. Moreover, adverse consequences can be difficult. Oddly enough, the honesty of telling people how you really think even if it's with no ill will toward them at all, can be taken very badly. For this reason, coming out as an atheist is no light matter for a lot of people. Many who realize that they no longer believe what their parents, siblings, or spouse believe can expect that the people they love and respect deeply will be hurt by their profession of non-belief. It's not uncommon for people to respond with expressions of grief, dismay, anger, a lot of questioning and arguing, and even hurtful measures, like outing the person to other people whom they were not yet ready to tell. Sometimes coming out involves telling a person who has economic control. For example, when someone is coming out to their spouse on whom they are financially dependent, or quite often when a teen comes out to his or her devoutly religious parents. Additionally, friendships that have lasted for many years can abruptly evaporate, and no matter how amicably or quietly this can happen, people who have not cultivated strong relationships outside their faith communities can easily find themselves very socially isolated. And then we have a group of people for whom it's especially difficult. People who are not just devoutly religious, but professionals within their religion. Clergy coming out. Even more challenging, this subtype of closet atheists who work professionally within their faith communities and have their livelihoods wholly structured around a belief system that they no longer sincerely adhere to. This is especially challenging for those who started their careers in early adulthood and never developed any other professional skills. Also, the thought of facing the disappointment from other believers, including people whom they've personally mentored into the faith, is overwhelming and can seem insurmountable. Fortunately, a support group has emerged for people in this particularly difficult situation. It's called the Clergy Project. It's an international, non-profit organization devoted to providing a support community and hope to current and former religious professionals who no longer hold supernatural beliefs. It operates as an online sort of safe space where closeted atheists' identities are strictly guarded and members are able to discuss an array of issues ranging from philosophical and ethical topics to practical matters relating to relationships and transitioning to a new career path. But many also, whether clergy or not, or where they're coming from, it's not a clean break. It's oftentimes they deal with lingering notions. Like a lot of other major transitions that a person might make in life, many people will reach the intellectual conclusion that they do not believe in the religion they have long identified with, even to the point of disavowing their religion and moving on to establish a new non-theistic lifestyle going forward, yet still struggling internally with complex, negative, and all too often debilitating feelings to wrestle with. Many people report lingering feelings of fear, which, much like a child being scared of a monster in the closet, is demonstrably irrational and yet very real. The sense of guilt, the feeling that a God is watching over you, that you've betrayed many or most of the people you care about, the vacuum of inability to imagine what it is like to be dead. How does anyone imagine not having experiences anymore? This space of thought becomes the perfect space for well-developed ideas of what hell is like, ideas that have been developed over a long period of belief. For a lot of people, these thoughts and feelings are about as unshakable as they are demonstrably irrational. In fact, there's a term to describe these experiences. It's called religious trauma syndrome. Psychologist Marlene Winell coined the term, and I'll just quote her where she defines it as a set of symptoms and characteristics that tend to go together and which are related to harmful experiences with religion. They are the result of two things: immersion in a controlling religion and the secondary impact of leaving a religious group. While this is not a condition that is listed in the DSM-5, she likens it to people who carried the harmful symptoms of eating disorders before their conditions were recognized as actual disorders. And the people with eating problems would feel alone and totally, personally at fault for their conditions. If anyone here thinks they or someone they know are struggling with problematic, lingering guilt and fear despite their certainty of no longer believing in the religion that they left behind, I strongly recommend her book titled Leaving the Fold, a guide for former fundamentalists and others leaving their religion. In her book, she likens the experience of leaving a religion to divorce, rife with all the tumultuous feelings of grief, anger, guilt, depression, lowered self-esteem, and social isolation. But while there are many resources available to assist people who are recovering from a broken marriage, there have been far fewer places for people to find help in their departure from faith. Fortunately, this is changing for the better, and this book can be a great starting point. But I wouldn't leave you with just a book. Finding someone like-minded and even not so like-minded people to engage in meaningful dialogue with and forge new relationships can be tremendously helpful. In fact, a lot of people are recognizing this need and working hard to meet it for themselves and others. In recent years, atheist communities have emerged and are a growing trend across the globe. Groups like the Sunday Assemblies, originating in the UK, are spreading out to locations around the world, including right here in Seattle. They hold services on Sunday mornings in a format that is in many ways similar to what you would find at an evangelical church. And some of the people here have attended those. And they are overtly designed to provide all of the benefits of a faith community, but without the dogma, with singing time, much like opening worship, but to secular music that can still be moving for the participants and somehow consistent with the message that will be discussed in lieu of what normally would be called a sermon at a church service. These talks are anything from a TED Talk on YouTube to a guest speaker or one of the assembly organizers sharing an important message. But Sunday Assemblies are just one example. Of course, we also have this right here, what we call the Atheist Church, which has prompted some interesting discussions, even very recently, as to why we borrow the very Christian term church to describe this group. Personally, I like the term, in so much as it very succinctly connotes secularity while implying community in a way that is familiar to many former members of faith-based communities who might be looking for a non-religious substitute. There are also many other ways that like-minded secular people are connecting. You can pull up a lot of other groups around here through the Meetup app and elsewhere, and I would encourage any one of you to do it. To wrap things up, I'd just like to say that I hope this talk has given a good overview of what a lot of formerly religious people go through, to identify what some of their needs and perspectives might include so that people here who might have recently left a faith might better come to realize that they're not alone. I also hope I've provided people who've never seriously carried a supernatural belief with a little more insight into just how deeply a person is shaped by a long-standing theistic worldview. I know my talk is mainly focused on the experiences of former Christians. That is largely because it's the perspective that I'm most comfortable representing as a former Christian myself. But I also know there are people here with very different backgrounds and very compelling stories to share. So I hope some of you will be able to contribute during the discussion time and bring even more insight to the topic. Thank you.